Okay, here with Dr. Lopkin. I'm Jeffrey Sherman, another edition of Carnivore Bites. And Dr. Lopkin, I'm going to throw it out to you in terms of what you think was the big news event since last week.
Well, we've had a number of events go on. Trump nominated his Supreme Court nominee. He's had a turbulent meeting at NATO, which actually ended up really well. And then we've got the Muller investigation, where we
Okay, let's talk about the Mueller investigation first. Your indications are what happened leads us to believe that it's a political witch hunt. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Mueller investigation indicted 12 Russian officials on hacking into the DNC computers. Now, remember, the DNC is not a government agency. They're a private organization. So This is basically the same as Russian hackers hacking into Sony or hacking into any company. It's not government servers.
Mm-hmm.
They made sure to announce the 12 indictments immediately before Trump was leaving to meet with Putin.
Okay, yes, I would agree with that. So what does it all mean in terms of the big scheme of things?
Well, it shows
it
shows the political motivation, because they could have announced this at any time, and they deliberately waited until the day before he went on the trip to meet with Putin to announce indictments. On top of that,
what do you think this does to the investigation?
I don't think it does anything to the investigation. It has absolutely no bearing. We knew hackers got into the DNC. Whether they were Russian or not, hey, they should be treated the same as any other criminal. But nowhere in the indictments is there anything linking them to anyone in the Trump administration, anyone in the Trump campaign. So what they've proven is Russian hackers hacked into the Democratic National Committee computers. Well, guess what? We already knew that, but they held off on these indictments until just before a meeting with Putin.
Okay, so why doesn't anyone besides you bring that up?
Oh, no, quite a number of people have brought it up. It's not just me. They've been talking about it on the news most of the day, especially in light of yesterday's Senate testimony of Peter Strzok.
And how do you think he performed?
Oh, he did not perform well.
What do you think is big? Go ahead, sorry.
He basically came across as he was playing the victim card. Oh, poor him. But the senators had his complete dossier, his complete background, and they hammered him.
And what do you think of the performance of the Democrats on this panel? They were obviously running cover for him, weren't they?
No, actually, the Democrats were quiet. They basically tried to wash their hands of the whole thing. They didn't protect him, but they didn't attack him either.
Yeah, I thought that they were running, kind of changing the subject, talking about immigration, other things that really didn't relate to what was the task at hand.
Well, I mean, the only thing that the FBI agent was capable of talking about was his behavior during the investigation and what he did in the investigation itself. Bringing up any other topic, he knew nothing about it. He's not a policymaker, so anything else was just a senator trying to get some camera time.
Yeah, I also thought, though, there was the Democrats trying to kind of run some cover, changing the dynamic. So basically in the news cycle, it wouldn't be about the task at hand. It'd be more about what Trump was doing, so on and so forth. I mean, in other terms of immigration and other things. So you had centrifuge. You could kind of diffuse what was really going on.
Well, fortunately, the news cycle didn't pick up on that, because the coverage was primarily of the FBI agent saying, he was offended by the line of questioning, and the senator saying, "I don't care what offends you."
I think Trey Gowdy did actually a good job. What did you think?
Yes, he did.
Yes, which was good. I say, though, how come, well, why didn't Trump tweet out about it being political in terms of timing, or did he?
They timed
I'm talking
it,
about the Mueller probe.
They timed the announcement so that it came out while Trump was meeting with the Queen. So he couldn't tweet anything. He was in the middle of a diplomatic meeting. He probably didn't even hear about it until after the meeting, which probably
but I'm
ending
surprised
about
he
now.
hasn't done anything. I'm surprised we haven't seen a tweet from him, lately then, I guess, or recently about it.
I think he's realized that there's no point. Most people have already determined that the Mueller investigation is politically motivated.
Do you know that in terms of people's viewpoint of it, Democrats have now actually even turned?
Oh, yes.
Did you know that? Democrats have turned on it.
Yeah, and more people are turning every day. Each time they conduct the poll, the percentage of Americans that are convinced it's politically motivated grows.
So does that mean that Mueller becomes more desperate and maybe going to dig into things that are, which is almost a rhetorical question, unrelated?
He's already been digging into things that are unrelated. Again, he's a prosecutor. His job is to prosecute someone. He's not going to stop until he gets somebody prosecuted.
Okay, then where's the Republicans? How come people aren't saying, okay, enough is enough, let's call this thing, let's call it quits? It's ridiculous, right? How come we don't hear more of that, which I think should be? This thing's been on for over a year. It's enough already.
I think the Republicans are also running for cover. I think they're focused on the midterm elections, and they don't want to look like they're too close to Trump, but they don't want to look like they're against him either. They're trying to play it as best.
Both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And what do you think is going to happen? Do you think Giuliani's going to let him testify at the Mueller investigation?
I don't think so. Unless they do it in writing, I don't think he's going to allow him to testify.
I think it'd be a very foolish move for him to do that, because I think, and you tell me what you think, I believe that Trump is pretty much over the hump on this. Meaning, I think it's pretty much done.
Yeah, I really think it is. I mean, they keep asking the question, well, what if such and such, turns? What if such and such cooperates with the investigation? And Rudy Giuliani has been very good about keeping this on message. He said, we don't care if they cooperate because he's innocent. There's nothing to cooperate on.
Mm-hmm. How much longer do you think this whole thing plays out?
I think it'll keep going at least through the midterm elections and possibly longer.
I would agree with that. When do you think it finally ends? I think it ends after the midterms, when Republicans have more comfort level, have a higher comfort level of saying, okay, enough is enough. Let's end this. This is nonsense.
I think it depends on what happens during the midterm elections. If the Democrats actually take a hit and they don't get this blue wave that they keep thinking they're going to get, I think they're going to make sure it digs in until after Trump wins re-election.
I think the opposite. I like your analysis about the midterms. I think if there is no blue wave, then I think Republicans become emboldened and say, okay, let's call this thing quits. Let's call it a day. That's what I think. I think it's they're playing kind of both sides. They don't know how the thing's going to break. They don't really want to commit. There's no real political mileage in committing. But I think if Trump, or I should say there is no blue wave, and maybe even the Republicans pick up some seats, I think then you'll see the Republicans come out of the woodwork saying this is enough is enough.
Yeah, if the Republicans pick up seats, if the Republicans do very well in the midterms, I think they will be able to turn the tide and go, all right, enough is enough. This is a distraction. We need to get to work.
I believe that is true. And finally, Trump's performance in Europe. Personally, I thought it was refreshing, thought it was good, thought it's long overdue, and I think our so-called allies needed a wake-up call, in particular Germany.
They really did, and I think the two big things that he gets out of this is, first of all, the NATO allies have already started picking up more of the defense budget, and they are committed to increasing their defense spending so that we don't have to spend all this money defending them. And the other thing is his meetings with Theresa May have basically shown the EU that, yes, when England leaves the EU, we will be putting together a trade deal with them. So the EU does not have that to hold over Britain anymore.
And what happens, do you think, with Ms. May? I think she's still politically finished.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know enough about British politics. I think she actually came out of the events of this week better than expected.
Agreed with that, yes.
I don't know if she's politically finished or not. There were massive protests in London today, ostensibly protesting Trump, but you saw a couple of British reporters actually talking to folks, and most of the protest had nothing to do with Trump. They were just protesting everything.
Well, that's usually the case in the left now. It's become a recreational event, hasn't it, Dr. Lopkin?
It does seem that way, yes.
Protests about person. In fact, it was funny, before the Supreme Court nominee even was announced, they interviewed millennials about Trump's choice, which he never made at that particular point in time. And they were saying he's a racist, it's awful, and they didn't even know who it was.
Oh, yeah. Well, you had Democrats, you had Chuck Schumer, couple others coming out saying they are going to vote against Trump's nominee. This is before there was a nominee. So they're not even caring about the qualifications of the person. Because Trump was nominating them, they were going to vote against them.
And I think that backfires on the Democrats. I think even, let's not talk about Democrats, I think independents have had enough of this nonsense. That's the only word for it.
Yeah, I think it really is going to backfire. And of course, they seem to really forget that when Trump came in, the Senate pulled the plug on the nuclear option. So they only need 51 votes to get him through. And
they will get,
they'll get those 51 votes without a single Democrat crossing.
And what further happens, they're already having, Trump craze syndrome. Now they lose the courts. I think they're going to be beside themselves. That is the left or the Democrats, same thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're very upset, although I question their use of Roe versus Wade. This seems to be the rallying cry, is they have to protect Roe versus Wade. However, if you look historically, Roe versus Wade was actually upheld not that long ago by a conservative court. The person that is being replaced voted against Roe versus Wade. So regardless of how this new nominee views it, Roe v. Wade is safe.
No, I think both sides use it as a political football, but in particular the left. Well, Dr. Lopkin concludes another edition of Carnivore Bites. A lot of things in the news, and we'll continue focusing on them.
Yes, we will.
You've been listening to Carnivore Radio's podcast. You can catch us here every week. Carnivore Radio is part of the Xvadio podcast network. You can listen to the podcast at blogtalkradio.com/Xvadio. If you want to be part of the conversation, you can listen to us live every Friday at 4 o'clock on WESU 88.1 Middletown, Connecticut. You can also catch us online at WESUFM.org. We look forward to hearing from you, and see you next week.